All right, so we've been focusing a lot on bits and bytes lately, which is pretty awesome, and some binary. And now the reason we've actually been looking at that is because we needed to explain what's actually been happening in our Moodlight program. So in lesson 2, you made your first Moodlight program, and it was very, very basic. The red, blue, and green values just incremented. You had a color object that changed the color of your background, and that color was redrawn to the screen. And if you remember, something very distinct happened while we ran this program. So what I'd like you to do is open up Visual Studio and pull up that program from yesterday, and we're kind of going to look into it and see what was actually occurring. So if you go in, you should open up Unit 3, Lesson 3, Moodlight. That was what we did in the last lesson. We actually made that Moodlight together as a class, and this is the code you should see. Now, I purposely had a bad programming practice when we did this week and talk about why it's so important, but when you come back into this, sometimes it's been a day, a week, a month, you don't know how long, and you look at this program and you're trying to remember why you programmed it the way you did. And when we wrote this originally, we did not include good comments. We didn't. And as a result, some of you may be looking at this going, oh my gosh, why did I write this program the way that I did? I didn't include any comments whatsoever. So we're going to actually add in comments, and then we're going to talk about why this program is doing what it's doing. So if I remember from the other day, I created red, green, and blue byte variables to go inside of a color object. So I'm going to start where we first started programming. Here I created a color object to hold the background color for my program, for my game. Now there are two ways you can comment. You can comment above the line of code with 2 slashes and say color object to hold background color. That's what I could write there. Or what you can also do is you could comment this off to the side here instead. So either way of commenting is fine. In the past, most students have liked commenting next to the code. It's a little bit easier to write it right away, right after they write the line of code, to write the line of code, then write the purpose behind it. And then right here, this line of code here, it clears the background to our background color objects. Remembering why we wrote this the way that we did. We programmed our program to, in the draw method, create a new color using the red, green, and blue values. And then here we cleared the background of the screen to that background color. So now we have much better comments in there. We can remember why we wrote things the way that we did. After we did this, we jumped up to the top and we created these 3 colors. So this is for, and I can move this over here, the red intensity of the background color. This is the green intensity of the background color, and this is the blue intensity of the background color. Now, it is much better coding practice to comment as you go, not to do it after the fact. So that's what I would advise you to do. Comment right away so you don't forget what you are doing. And then here, we're going to scroll down to the update method. This is also where we had some code that we wrote, and this is where we increase the red intensity every 60th of a second, or you can write every 1/60th of a second, whatever you want to write it, or you can say this is where we increase the intensity of the red 60 times per second. Just remembering what we were doing here, and this is the red intensity of our background. So taking good comments and remembering what each line of code is for, then I can copy this down, put it down here for the green as well. Line those up. And then we can put this for the blue as well. So remembering what we did and why. Now from here, I'm going to start the program. And if you remember previously, it increased from black to white, and then abruptly went back to black. And that's kind of what we're going to try and fix here. We're going to try and figure out what's going on here. Why is our program increasing at a nice rate and then abruptly changing all the way back to black? So this actually comes down to really understanding the definition of a byte. So I'm going to comment out the green and the blue actually to start right here, so we can just look at the red. And what we can see is happening is red is increasing. It starts at 0, it goes, it goes, it goes, it goes, and then it somehow abruptly changes and goes right back to 0. So in order to understand this, we need to look at our understanding of bytes and of bits and how they work together. So really what's happening here is you need to remember that red, blue, and green are byte variables. And to understand byte variables, you need to understand binary. So if you remember a byte from your previous classes, a byte holds what are called 8 bits. So essentially, a byte is made up of 8 ones and zeros. That's the case. So a byte can be any combination of ones and zeros. It can be 1 0, 1 1 0, 1 1, whatever it would be, as long as it has 8 ones and zeros. And this number right here, this number with all ones, is the biggest number that a byte can be because it can only hold 8 bits. And if you look at a byte, 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 is, if we convert that into our decimal system, is the number 255. So what happens is our program is increasing. It goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it keeps increasing until it hits 255. And when our red value equals 255 and tries to add one more, well, this is the number that represents 256. So what's happening in our program is it's incrementing all the way to 255. It's changing to 256, but the problem is a byte variable can only hold 8 ones and zeros. So what happens is it looks at the first 8. And the first 8 are these 8 bits here put together into a byte. So what happens is it changes drastically from 255 to 0. And that's what's happening in our program. We're essentially going all the way up to 255 and abruptly changing back to 0. And that's the change we're going to actually try and prevent, or the change we're going to try and kind of change. And we're going to change our program so that in the next program we make, it doesn't have that issue. It has a nice flow from 0 to 255 and back to 0. So that's what's happening in our program right now, is we're having this issue with bits and bytes. And you need to understand, have a good understanding of bits and bytes to understand what's happening in monogame with the colors on our background screen. So take a look at this one more time, watch it increment all the way up, because in the next lesson, when we learn about conditionals, we're actually going to combat this and we're going to change it so it has a nice flow up and a nice flow down. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an understanding of what's actually happening in your code. You can delete out those comments for green and blue and get ready for conditionals in the next lesson.